All right. So on number four, um, amp hour is the unit that they have for charge. Okay. So um, in our class we would do it in coulombs, but the amount of coulombs would be really big. So they came up with a different unit called amp hours. So they brought the time over, and then that's equal to charge. Currents in amps times is hours. So that's where that expression comes from. Okay. So if you ever have a cordless drill or a cordless tool like a battery powered, they're going to have most of those batteries are like 20 volts nowadays. Some of them, like back then, like they're 12 volts, but 20 volts is pretty standard. But they're different sizes based upon how much charge they can hold, and they're rated in terms of amp hours. So, just trying to give you some connection. Like, well, what's the difference between the batteries if they're all 20 volts? They'll say amp hours are different. So, a AAA battery has a voltage of 1.5 volts. A AA has a voltage of 1.5 volts. C has a battery or a voltage of 1.5 volts. A D size battery has a voltage of 1.5 volts. What's the difference? Your amp hours. How much charge can be held? How much chemicals they've got in there? It'll last longer. Good with that? What's the voltage on a 9 volt? 9 volts. Okay. Voltage on a car battery? Good guess. Nope. 12 volts. Car battery. Okay. Voltage on an outlet? 120, 110, depending on who you're talking. Good with that? Yep. All right. Tell your neighbor what the answer to this one is and why it is the answer. Get it on for a ride. Yep, you did it. Okay, hopefully your conversation sounded like this. There's the same amount of electrons going by second per second at all points, just like in a river. Whatever's going in has to go out. You can't have more water going in than going out, otherwise you get flooding. If you have more water going out than coming in, you get this like dried up spot. Okay, so whatever goes in has to come out. So, what do you think are happening to the electrons when they get to the resistor, the light bulb, the filaments to the light bulb? Thumbs up when you have a guess. Okay. Hopefully you've eliminated choice A. Okay. Light bulbs don't eat electrons for lunch. Okay. They just use their energy. Okay. So the electrons are close together, and that energy is being, the electric potential energy is being converted into heat and light. This is true. Okay. They actually speed up going through the film. It's like taking a garden hose. You stick your thumb over the end of it to squirt it. Okay, you have got more. Sorry, you have just as much current going through the hose part as you do at the tip where your thumb is. To get that much water out, it has to go faster at that spot. It's kind of like a shallow spot in a river. Get that? Okay. So C is the right answer. So which wire is going to have less resistance? A short wire or a long wire? Short makes sense. Okay, so if you had an extension cord, two extension cords, and I'm trying to go from this outlet to the middle of the classroom, and I had a choice between a 20-foot long extension cord and a 100-foot long extension cord, I should choose the 20 because there's less resistance. I'm wasting less energy. Okay, thick diameter or thin diameter wire is going to have less resistance. You had which is going to allow more water through it, a fire hose or a garden hose? Which is going to allow more traffic, a 2-lane highway or a 6-lane highway?
6-lane.
Does that make sense? So the thicker the wire, the more electrons you can get by a certain point every second. Okay, so when you go into a hardware store and you're trying to buy wire, they're going to rate it in terms of gauge. Okay, the lower the gauge, the thicker the wire. So think of gauge as in terms of resistance. So the lower the gauge number, the less the resistance. Good with that? So like there's in residential wiring, there's 14 gauge, 12 gauge, 10 gauge. Those are your popular ones. Hot wire versus cold wire, which is going to have less resistance. So on computers, we have cooling fans or vents to try to keep it cool. We want cold wires, less resistance. Some hardcore gamers have like liquid nitrogen or cooling systems for their CPUs to keep it no lag going down. So it's like some people get really serious about this. So in the popular thought with a wire, hot wire having less resistance is like things are able to move more. Okay. So here is a microscopic view of the wire, and we're going to look at the plight of an electron. Okay. So as the electron goes in, it goes really fast, but it hits stuff. Like, okay, it's a rough life being an electron. Okay, how fast it goes this way, this is called electron drift, and this is on the scale of millimeters per second. Okay, now when the wire is hot, the nucleus of these atoms are vibrating more. And so the gauntlet that they go through, the electrons go through, is much more violent, causing more resistance. You okay with that? Okay. So that's why cold wire is better. So what's going to have more resistance? Neighbor?
Is tungsten not like melt?
It would, but it's in a the bulb vacuum. That's when you break it, you hear like a weird pop.
I was like, how bright to get out, so like maybe do like melt and go in there.
It's totally gonna be beautiful.
Correct answer is B.
See?
Okay. It's skinny. Either that, more resistance. Okay. And it's hot. Okay. Don't worry about that. All right. So, popular question that comes up is like, what? I thought like when I know this would never happen, but leaving your cell phone in the car overnight over winter. No way. Okay, but leaving any electronics in your car the next day, you go to start it up. It's a struggle for it. Calculator, whatever. Even starting your car, struggle. Cold edge. What gives? I thought like cold has less resistance. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Like struggle for electronics to turn on when it's cold.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are all powered by what? True. What's the source of the electricity? Batteries. All those devices that are struggling to turn on when they're cold are battery powered. What happens to a chemical reaction when things get cold? Slows down. That's why it's a struggle. It's not a resistance thing. It's a chemical rate of reaction thing in the batteries. You do that. So like warm up your whatever the battery is. That'll help that process. Good with that? Okay. Correct answer is C. Voltage is not flow. That's current. This, you haven't learned about this yet. This is power. This is what the pre-quiz is about. Okay. Voltage is how crowded the electrons are from one side of the outlet compared to the other. How motivated they are to go from one side to the other. Good with that? So, when they say warning, high voltage, tell your neighbor. Correct answer is B. Okay. Voltage is the push. Current's the flow. Have you ever heard this expression? Current is what kills. Okay. So, if you have 1 milliamp flowing through you, you can feel it. 5, it kind of hurts. 10, you get some muscle spasms. 15, loss of muscle control. Have you ever had those, like physical therapy, those electron therapy, like stimulants, muscle things? Okay. In college, I had a roommate that was a PT major, and he brought one of those home. That was so much fun. When I cooked them up, like, and you could totally see the quads, like each muscle just hurt so bad. It's so cool. It was like, it was probably in this realm here. You have 70 milliamps going through your heart in more than a second. Game over. Um, there's one guy that made the Darwin Awards. He was trying to measure the resistance of blood flow, and so he took a 9-volt battery and then jammed electrodes through his thumb and completed the circuit through his blood, and he died. 9 volt.
Figure it out.
He didn't. So, yeah, not the smartest way to go. So, these high voltage power wires, why don't the birds when they land on them die? Correct answer is actually all of these. All are true. So the biggest thing is you don't want an electric potential difference. If there's a difference in electric potential from one foot to the next, then electrons are motivated to transfer through there. So if they're touching the ground, really crowded in the wire, not in the ground, okay? If they're holding on to another wire, there's a difference in crowdedness. Okay? When you hold on to the same wire, electrons are like, why would I want to go up through the bird and then back down? I'm good with this. They might experience a little bit of a shock, kind of like the shock that you get when like getting in and out of your car or something like that, but nothing substantial. That make sense? So that's why you don't touch a downed wire, because you're connected to ground. Yep. All right, so talking about the third prong ground wire. Your devices will work fine without it. It is purely a safety device. So let's talk about what would happen if you didn't have the third prong. So you have your washing machine, it's plugged in. Let's say that on the spin cycle, there's some imbalance in the clothes, and you get this goo, right? In the shaking process, let's say that some metal of the frame starts rubbing on the wires that are plugged in. At some point in time, that's going to expose, that's going to whittle away the rubber insulation and expose the metal part of the wire. And so if that metal wire, the copper wire, touches the metal frame of the washing machine, that becomes part of the circuit. And usually these things are like on rubber feet, so they're like prevented from going to the ground. But if you go to touch it, you're like, oh look, path to ground. So what they do is they have a ground wire. It's a third wire that literally is connected to the plumbing in your pipe of your house. And that third wire is literally bolted to the metal casing, the metal frame of that device. So that if this red frame occurs, then the current will go through this wire to the ground, not to you. That would cause your circuit breaker to trip. There's a lot of current going through that, but you're not shocked. Okay? So that's what the third prong is for. Purely a safety device. Okay.
Okay, so like what if like the wire's exposed and then you have like the third prong, whatever, and you touch the exposed wire, you still get shocked, or does it like get grounded or something?
You touch it, yeah, you're gonna get shocked. Because,
Oh,
yeah, because at that point, this works because the exposed part was touching the metal. That's why it works. Not, if you take that out and you touch them, that's not gonna help you at all. Yeah, all right. Okay. Okay, let me give you a little insight here. The voltage is determined solely by the power supply. So in our houses, the standard voltage is 120 volts for normal outlets, for normal wiring. Okay? So the voltage is the same. So what would cause current to be higher? If voltage is the same, what happens to resistance? Goes down. B. Good with that? Yeah. So this is known as a short circuit. It's a complete circuit, but that circuit does not include a main resistor. Okay, some of you might have experienced this when you're trying to turn the light bulb on. Okay. The wire gets hot because of why? Oh, your neighbor.
Mr. Smith,
Mhm.
how much voltage is in the so
That's a great question. It's a lot.
is it one like the
There's too many electrons.
It's more than one.
So
You're
that's
saying
high
like 70s
voltage.
fan?
Okay, so that's current. So with the
Is that
AB,
the same?
that's different because that's like a static electricity shock.
Yeah, you're
It's
right.
like all of a sudden,
Okay.
it's not continual
So like,
flows.
is there current in
You can kind of talk about it, but it's a momentary current,
the? Okay.
if that makes sense. So it's enough to like, but if it was like continual, like one Mississippi, you're dead.
Okay.
But just I'm not sure the time duration on that, but it's short. Good question. Okay, is everybody good with B? All right. So we had a question, good question. The AEDs, the clear, like what is that? Okay, so though that's more of a static electricity charge, like it's a surge of a bolt, like, it's not a continual flow. I don't know what the measurements are on those, but the voltage is probably pretty high. And how the momentary current is high, it's just not sustained. So if you had 70 milliamps going for one Mississippi, you're dead. But if it's like, poof, just real quick, that doesn't kill you. That just hopefully jump starts your heart. Okay. So here, if we connect the light bulb, I'll give you a hint. The answer is E, none of these. Tell your neighbor. what the right answer is, what combination. Okay, is everybody good with voltage is the same, the resistance goes up, therefore the current goes down. With that, you incorporate the light bulb in the system. Now, when I was a kid, my dad was trying to teach me how to jump start a car, and so we had these metal clamps, and I knew like, metal is a conductor, yet I'm touching them, and I knew like I saw this happen. My dad's like, don't do this, so I'm touching metal on metal. Okay, I'm like, why am I not getting shocked? Like I'm touching metal. Like if I do this, and then just kidding, nothing happens. But this is still on. Like why is that? Why am I safe to do this? This is totally safe. What's the voltage on a car battery? 12 volts. Not very high. Okay, so my head has too much resistance to have any substantial amount of current. Good with that? Okay. So that tell you can lick a 9-volt battery. See if you get a little, if it's dead or not. Good. Okay. Last thing I want to leave you with. Boo hiss. Well, hopefully you know how to jump start a car.